Hello, I am Dr. Cicely Bichu and welcome to my biology class. I will be covering in this session the introduction, and to start, let me discuss first the learning outcomes of the course. As you can see from this slide, the definition of biology comes first, and then from there, it is aimed at students be able to understand biology as a unified science of life, and thus one can now enumerate the characteristics of life and be able to explain the significance of each. Scientific inquiry is added in the lecture for the students to know its principles and for them to be able to appreciate more the application of biology to the engineering field. Life is not easy to define, but we can better understand it on the basis of its structure or having a set of pattern or organization. Having said that, we can now define biology as the scientific study of life, which is composed of different and varied living things on Earth. There are 8 characteristics that define life. So actually we have order, regulation, growth and development, energy use, response to stimuli, reproduction, evolution or adaptation, homeostasis or steady state. So first we have here order. Example, human body is composed of cells. Cells are composed of genes and then the DNA. And then for the regulation, so living things have multiple regulatory mechanisms to properly coordinate internal functions. For example, the organ systems. So we have, let's say, digestive system or circulatory systems that perform specific functions in the body and are connected with each other. Then we have the growth and development. All things grow and develop according to specific instructions coded for by their genes. Then for letter D, we have the energy use. All organisms use a source of energy for their metabolic activities. And then we have the response to stimuli. For example, plants respond to touch or sound. Bacteria can move toward or away from chemicals, and we call that as chemotaxis. Or if the stimuli is light, you call that as phototaxis. And then you have there the reproduction. All living things reproduce, even single-celled organisms reproduce by first duplicating their DNA, which is the genetic material, and dividing it equally as the cell prepares to divide to form new cells. And then it is being followed by the evolution or adaptation. So all living things have the ability to survive or reproduce. Example, certain bacteria can survive in boiling hot springs due to their heat-resistant protein. And lastly, you have their homeostasis, or we call that as the steady state, and that is the ability of an organism to maintain internal conditions like the polar bear, which can regulate their body temperatures to withstand low temperatures and conserve body heat. To further explain the meaning of order, so I have here a picture of a toad, which could represent a highly organized structure consisting of cells, tissues, organs, and organ systems. So for the response, so I have here the Mimosa pudica, wherein its leaves are very sensitive and it will instantly droop and fold when touched. After a few minutes, the plant returns to its normal state. The kittens which are being shown in this slide have different fur colors, though they have inherited their genes from both parents. For energy use, one good example is this California condor, which uses chemical energy derived from food to power its flight. This slide depicts the many levels of life, and taking a look at from the macro to micro perspective, we can start from the biosphere. Biosphere is made up of ecosystems. It also represents the zones of life on Earth, which also includes land, water, and atmosphere. Ecosystem, on the other hand, is made up of communities, and communities are made up of population. Population is made up of organisms living within a specific area, and these organisms have organ systems and organs. And their organ systems and organs are made up of tissues. Tissues are made up of cells. Cells are made up of organelles. And the nucleus of organelles contain molecules and atoms. For the pioneers of biology, we have Sir Francis Bacon, who is being credited as the first to define the scientific method. We have Robert Hooke, who is known for his compound microscope and is often called the father of cytology. And then we have Theophrastus, the Greek philosopher, who is often called the father of botany. The other contributors in the field of biology, we have Herophilus, the father of anatomy, Edward Jenner, who first made the vaccine against smallpox, and then we have the father of histology, Marie-Françoise Xavier Bichat, and then the father of embryology, Caspar Friedrich Wolff, a German surgeon. Here we have Gregor Johann Mendel, the father of genetics. The one who discovered Bacillus anthracis was Robert Koch, a German physician and microbiologist. And then the father of endocrinology is Charles Edward Brown Sequard. And lastly, the father of ecology is G. Evelyn Hutchinson, a UK-born zoologist. Now, let's move on to the discussion of scientific inquiry, which involves observations and hypotheses, collection of data, forming and testing of hypotheses. Here, the data are recorded observations of items of informations. So we have two kinds of data, namely the qualitative data, which are simply descriptions, and then the quantitative data are recorded measurements, which are sometimes organized in tables and in graphs. So when you say inductive reasoning, it draws conclusion from the specific observations to important generalization. And if you compare it with deductive, so that is actually from general to specific. So observations and inductive reasoning can lead us to ask questions, and hypothesis is a tentative answer to query which can lead to predictions that can be tested by observation or experimentation. So this scientific inquiry is a form of skill wherein students can learn how to think logically, rationally, and then analytically. This slide summarizes the importance of biology. Biology explains the changes of the human bodies. It shapes different careers. Biology also provides answers to large-scale problems. It teaches concepts on basic living. It also helps in answering the fundamental questions about life. And lastly, it paves the way for scientific investigations. Science and technology are interdependent and has dramatic effects on society. A very good example of this statement is the discovery of DNA by James Watson and Francis Crick, which paved the way for the advances in DNA technology, and currently it is being used to test hereditary diseases. The second point here is in any new developed technology, ethical issues have to always be considered. So I have this example of an antibiotic which is to be administered carefully, but there are cases that some bacteria tend to be naturally resistant to the drugs. So it still can survive, thus becoming a huge problem in public health. So considerations in terms of politics, economics, and cultural values are also some of the factors in the development of new technology. This is now the set of questions for class discussion and the references used for this lecture. Thank you for listening.